Commander Zilax's claws trembled over the emergency broadcast control. Galactic Wildlife Council, Priority Alpha 1. The apex predator cubs have bonded with the human. Protocol requires immediate termination of all 3 subjects. The transmission crackled across 17 star systems before the first response came through. Confirm bonding status, Commander. Thornback Ridge hunters don't bond. Confirmed. Zilax watched the monitor feeds with all 4 eyes, his secondary hearts hammering against his thorax. Cubs entered Human Johnson's quarters 6 days ago. They haven't left. They're reporting to her. Silence. Then, reporting? Making contact vocalizations, waiting for acknowledgement, bringing her specimens of their kills. Zilax pulled up the overnight footage, his manipulator appendages shaking. Watch this. On screen, 2 thornback cubs, each already the size of Earth wolves, covered in overlapping bone plates that could shred titanium, padded across the small quarters. The female cub carried something gray and limp in her jaws. The male cub followed, making soft churring sounds that had never been recorded in 40 million years of species evolution. They approached the bed where Emma Johnson slept. "Dear gods," whispered the council representative. "Get your euthanasia team ready. How long until maturity?" 19 days. Zilax checked his chronometer. Maybe 18. You know the protocol, Commander. The last time Thornback cubs bonded, they killed 300,000 civilians defending their bonded subject. That was the Kelvor incident. Before that, the Terminus massacre. 4 million dead. You have the historical records. I've read them. Zilax had done nothing but read them for 6 days straight. 14 documented bonding incidents across galactic history. 14 extinction-level catastrophes. The cubs would mature in less than 3 weeks, and once fully grown, they would view any threat to Emma Johnson, real or perceived, as cause for unlimited violence. The problem is, there is no problem, Commander. Terminate the cubs. Terminate them now, before they reach critical mass. We're dispatching a specialist team, but they won't arrive for 48 hours. You need to act immediately. On the monitor, the cubs reached Emma's pillow. The female cub dropped her kill, a dead storage vermin, beside Emma's face. Both cubs sat, waiting. "They're sitting," Zilax said quietly. "What?" "They're sitting, waiting for her to wake up." That's not territorial imprinting behavior. That's not defensive aggression. That's irrelevant. The council representative's voice pitched higher. You've seen the projections. Once they mature, their neural chemistry locks. They'll kill anything that comes within 50 meters of her. Anyone who looks at her wrong, anyone who raises their voice. They'll tear this station apart, and then they'll start on the colony. You have 600 personnel on that. Station Commander. Zilax knew. He'd run the evacuation scenarios. 43 people would die in the panic alone. If they tried to separate Emma from the cubs now, the cubs would fight. If they killed the cubs in front of her, the trauma protocols would require. On screen, Emma Johnson stirred, opened her eyes, looked directly at 2 apex predators inches from her face. "She's awake," Zilax whispered. "Prepare to witness first contact with bonded." Emma yawned, stretched, reached out and scratched behind the female cub's bone ridge, the precise location that should trigger a reflexive kill strike. The cub leaned into her hand, purred. "That's impossible," the council representative breathed. "Thornbacks don't have the anatomical structure to purr." "Acknowledged," Zilax said. His scientific training warred with the evidence of his own eyes. They also don't have the neural wiring for delayed gratification. but they've been waiting for her acknowledgement before eating their kills for 6 days. Emma sat up, completely unconcerned by the fact that she was surrounded by the galaxy's most dangerous juvenile carnivores. "Oh. Did you two catch the vermin in storage again? Good babies. Such good hunters." The cubs' tails thrashed. A pleasure response. Also impossible. "Get your team ready, Commander," the council representative said. "We're authorizing lethal force. You have 48 hours to neutralize the threat before our specialists arrive. If you fail, we'll have no choice but to evacuate and sterilize the entire station." The transmission ended. Zillax stared at the screen, where Emma Johnson was now feeding the cubs breakfast from her personal rations, chatting to them like they were house cats instead of weapons of mass destruction. His security chief, Kyle Thas, entered the command center. "The euthanasia specialists are ready, Commander. They're asking for authorization to proceed." "Stand by." Zillax's eyes remained locked on the monitor. "Sir, every moment we delay increases the risk. Those cubs could reach aggressive maturity ahead of schedule. We could be looking at 15 days, not 18. "I'm aware." "Then why are we waiting?" Zillax zoomed in on the footage. Emma was holding up some kind of data pad, showing the cubs something. They leaned in, examining whatever she was displaying. Their bone plates, razor-sharp, impenetrable, were folded flat against their bodies in a relaxation posture that shouldn't exist in their species. "Because," Zillax said slowly, "in 40 million years of evolution, across 14 separate bonding incidents, across countless research studies and behavioral analyses, no one has ever seen a thornback ridge hunter wait patiently for breakfast." Kyle Thas tried the separation protocol first. Standard procedure. Deploy reinforced containment barriers while the human was at morning meal. Separate the subjects, assess individual threat levels, proceed with termination. The barriers materialized around the cubs. Military-grade force fields capable of containing a plasma detonation. The cubs looked at them, looked at each other, then simply walked through the barriers like they weren't there. "What?" Kyle Thas checked his equipment. The barriers were active, fully powered. The cubs had just ignored them. "Commander, the cubs are demonstrating abilities not documented in any... I see it." Zillax was already pulling up the species genome database. Thornback ridge hunters couldn't phase through solid matter. Their bodies were too dense, too physical. They were ambush predators, not ghost walkers. The cubs trotted down the corridor, following Emma's scent trail toward the cafeteria. "Sedation protocol," Zillax ordered. "Maximum dosage. Authorization Zillax 7 Crimson." The station's medical systems deployed aerosol tranquilizers, enough sedative to drop a full-grown thornback adult in 4 seconds. The cubs walked through the cloud, sneezed once, and kept moving. Kyle Thas stared at the readouts. "They metabolized it. Instantly. That's not... The compounds should have..." "Deploy recall pheromones. Species-specific. They're genetically programmed to respond." The ventilation systems flooded with chemical signals, the scent markers that triggered every known thornback instinct. Return to territory. Abandon non-pack entities. Isolate. The cubs' nostrils flared. They smelled the pheromones. Then they sneezed again and continued toward the cafeteria. "They're ignoring species-level chemical imperatives," Zillax said into his emergency comm. "Council, we have a situation beyond standard protocols." He found Emma in the cafeteria, eating breakfast while reviewing station reports on her datapad. The cubs sat on either side of her chair, watching the other personnel with unblinking yellow eyes. "Ms. Johnson." Zillax approached carefully, keeping his secondary arms visible and non-threatening. "We need to discuss the cubs." Emma looked up, smiled. "Oh, aren't they being good? They waited so patiently this morning. Brought me their hunting reports and everything." "Their hunting reports?" "Yeah, they've been catching the vermin in the storage bays. Little gray things with too many legs?" Emma scratched the male cub behind his bone ridge, the exact spot where a cluster of hyperactive nerve endings should trigger an immediate bite reflex. The cub leaned into her hand, making that impossible purring sound. "They like to show me what they caught. I think they want approval? Like, 'Look what I did, Mom.'" "Ms. Johnson, those cubs are thornback ridge hunters. They're classified as—" "Oh, I know. Galactic apex predators, super dangerous, 40 million years of evolution as solo hunters." Emma took a bite of her breakfast. "I read the file when they first showed up. They're just babies, though. What's everyone freaking out about?" Zilax felt his diplomatic training collapsing. "They're not. Bonding is their extinction trigger. When they mature, they'll kill anyone who approaches you. Historical records document 14 separate incidents across 14 incidents where people probably didn't set proper boundaries." Emma interrupted. She pointed at the female cub. "Nova, gentle. You're staring too hard." The cub, Nova apparently, blinked and relaxed her posture. "See? She just needed a reminder." Emma returned to her datapad. "They're learning really fast, actually. Yesterday I taught them not to bring live vermin into my quarters. Today we're working on inside voices." "Inside voices. They're roaring. It's really loud. Hurts the ears." Emma demonstrated with a finger gesture. "Soft roars inside, big roars outside. Basic manners." Zilax's calm erupted. "Commander, this is Galactic Wildlife Council Emergency Committee. We're convening an emergency session. Xenobiologist Kaeldra is en route to your station, arrival in 4 hours. Do not attempt further containment protocols. Do not engage the cubs directly. Maintain observation only until specialist arrival." A new voice cut through the channel, older, carrying the weight of centuries. "Commander Zilax, this is xenobiologist Kaeldra. I've studied thornback ridge hunters for 200 standard years. I've analyzed all 14 bonding incidents. Bonding is their extinction trigger. It's the single most dangerous behavioral cascade in known biology. Whatever you're seeing, it's not what you think it is." Zilax watched Emma finish her breakfast, watched her wipe her mouth with a napkin, watched her look at the cubs with an expression he'd seen before. Parental affection. "Cubs," Emma said. "Paws." Both cubs lifted their forepaws. "Dirty. Go wash them before we head to the observation deck." The cubs looked at their paws, looked at Emma, then trotted toward the sanitation stations like this was a completely normal request. "Commander?" Kaeldra's voice held a note of concern. "What's happening there?" "The human," Zilax said slowly, "just told apex predators to wash their paws, and they're doing it." Silence on the comm. Then, "I'm accelerating my arrival. Don't let those cubs reach maturity. The death toll is always the same, everyone." Kaeldra arrived with 17 datapads, 400 years of research compiled across multiple species, and absolute certainty in her understanding of thornback behavioral patterns. That certainty lasted approximately 4 minutes. "She's disciplining them," Kaeldra whispered, watching through the observation window as Emma crouched beside the male cub in the station's small habitat garden. A maintenance worker's pet, some kind of 6-legged rodent analog, cowered behind a planter. "Orion, no." Emma's voice was firm but not angry. "Gentle paws. Show me gentle. The cub, Orion, had his bone-plated paw raised, claws extended. At Emma's words, he froze, looked at his paw, then slowly, deliberately, retracted his claws and touched the small creature with the pad of his paw. The rodent didn't run. Good boy, Emma's voice filled with warmth. See? Gentle means friends. Rough means scary. Orion made a soft churring sound, that impossible vocalization, and touched the rodent again, gently. That's not in their genetic memory, Kyldra said. Her secondary breathing spiracles were fluttering with distress. Thornbacks don't have a concept of gentle. They have hunt, kill, eat, sleep. 4 behavioral states. That's it. 200 years of research, Commander. 4 behavioral states. I'm aware of your research, Doctor. Then you understand. Kyldra pulled up her data. Remorse behaviors. She's teaching them remorse. Thornbacks don't feel remorse. They're ambush predators. Their neural architecture doesn't support complex emotional responses beyond aggression and satisfaction. On the other side of the window, Nova approached a different small creature, one of the station botanist's pollinator specimens. The insectoid creature buzzed nervously. Nova looked at Emma. Emma nodded. Nova lay down, making herself smaller, less threatening. The pollinator landed on her bone ridge. They're protecting smaller creatures, Zilax observed. Yesterday, Orion stopped a maintenance drone from accidentally crushing a nest of local insects. He picked up the nest with those claws and moved it to safety. Impossible. But Kyldra's voice had lost its certainty. She'd watched the footage 17 times, watched a creature engineered by evolution to be a perfect killer demonstrate care for something it should view as irrelevant at best, prey at worst. Emma stood, brushed off her hands, and walked into the observation room. The cubs followed, staying exactly 3 paces behind her, a distance that allowed her space, but kept her in their protective range. Ms. Johnson, Kyldra began, I need to understand your methodology. What you're doing, it contradicts every documented behavior pattern in Thornback evolution. Oh, you must be the specialist. Emma smiled. Yeah, they're doing great. You just have to set clear boundaries and be consistent, like any toddler. These aren't toddlers. Kyldra's voice rose despite her best efforts. They're apocalypse engines. They're weapons of planetary destruction wrapped in bone plates and murder instincts. They're babies. Emma's tone didn't change. Babies who didn't have anyone teaching them how to behave. They don't need teaching. They need termination before they reach maturity and kill everyone on this station. Orion, Nova, sit. Both cubs sat immediately. Stay. They stayed. Emma walked to the far end of the room. Come. The cubs came, stopping precisely when they reached her. See? Emma scratched behind Nova's bone ridge. They're learning. They want to learn. They just needed someone to show them. Kyldra pulled up her historical data with trembling manipulators. The Kelvor incident. 300,000 dead. The bonded cubs were 3 weeks from maturity when they started killing. The Terminus massacre. 4 million casualties. The cubs were 2 weeks from maturity. The pattern is consistent. Bonding triggers territorial aggression that escalates until someone tries to separate them from their bonded subject, Emma finished. Yeah, I read those reports. Did anyone in those incidents try actually parenting the cubs? Or did they just panic and try to kill them? The question hung in the air. Kyldra scrolled through centuries of data. The protocols were established to. The risk was too. That's not an answer. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor. Both cubs immediately flanked her. Watch this, She pulled out her data pad. On it were images, the overnight footage from her quarters. Every morning, they bring me reports. See? Last night's catches, organized by size, biggest to smallest. They figured out I was counting them, so they started organizing them to make counting easier. The footage showed both cubs carefully arranging dead vermin in neat rows. Then they wait for me to wake up. They tell me about their night, where they hunted, what they found, if anything unusual happened. I praise the good behaviors, correct the rough ones. Yesterday, Orion was too aggressive with a cargo handler, so I explained that crew members are family, not threats. This morning, he brought the same handler a gift, one of his catches, an apology. Kaeldra stared at the footage, at creatures that shouldn't be capable of organization, shouldn't understand apology, shouldn't care about approval. They just needed someone to care about what they did, Emma said simply. That's basic child psychology. If you ignore a kid, they act out. If you engage with them, set boundaries, give them positive reinforcement, they thrive. These guys? She gestured at the cubs. They're thriving. But the genetic programming is probably designed for solo hunters who never had a parent, Emma interrupted. Right? They're born, they're alone, they learn to kill or they die. But what if that's not what they needed? What if 40 million years of evolution was just waiting for someone to actually raise them? Kaeldra's worldviews, 2 centuries of careful research, peer-reviewed studies, established protocols, cracked like ice under pressure. This changes everything, she whispered. Kaeldra spent the next 6 hours in the archive, cross-referencing 40 million years of evolutionary data with Emma's week of basic parenting. Commander Zilax found her surrounded by holographic displays, muttering to herself in 3 different languages. Doctor, they never had parents. Kaeldra's voice was hollow with realization. In 40 million years of evolution, Thornback Ridge hunters never developed parental bonding. They're born in clutches of 4 to 6. They emerge from eggs already capable of hunting, and they immediately disperse. Sibling competition eliminates the weak within hours. Survivors go solo. That's the entire life cycle. I'm aware. No, you're not understanding. Kaeldra pulled up neural scans, comparisons between the cubs and adult specimens. Look at this. The cubs' brains are developing structures that don't exist in adult thornbacks. New neural pathways, synaptic connections forming in real time in response to Emma's interactions. Zilax leaned closer. That's impossible. Neural architecture is determined by genetics. Apparently not when you introduce a variable that never existed in the evolutionary environment. Kaeldra's manipulators danced across the displays. Emma isn't triggering territorial bonding. She's triggering familial bonding, a framework that was never activated because there was never a parent present to activate it. The genetic potential was always there, waiting. 40 million years of dormant code. The extinction events were territorial. The cubs bonded to someone, but without a parental framework, they defaulted to the only bonding model they had, territory and defense. Protect the territory, eliminate all threats, escalate until nothing remains. Kaeldra pulled up the historical incidents, her understanding shifting as she reviewed them. But Emma isn't their territory. She's their mother. Different neural pathways, different behavioral outcomes. You're certain? Watch this. Kaeldra played recent footage. A cargo handler had accidentally startled Nova while carrying a heavy container. The cub had spun, claws extended, bone plates raised, pure threat response. Then Emma's voice. Nova. Accidents happen. He didn't mean it. Nova had looked at Emma, looked at the terrified cargo handler, then slowly retracted her claws and made an apologetic churring sound. "That's empathy," Kaeldra said. "Cubs learning emotional regulation through maternal modeling. She's teaching them that not every surprise is a threat, that context matters, that other beings have intentions and make mistakes. They're developing theory of mind." Zilax felt the implications cascading. The termination protocols were based on territorial bonding models. We were trying to prevent something that isn't happening. Kaeldra closed her displays. "We need to contact the council immediately." The emergency session convened within the hour. 17 council members, 400 collective years of xenobiological expertise, and one very tired human wildlife rehabilitator. "So," Emma said, watching the council through the view screen while both cubs dozed at her feet. "Can we cancel the whole termination thing? Because that's pretty messed up." Council Elder Sinara spoke first. "Ms. Johnson, we've reviewed Dr. Kaeldra's findings. Your methodology has created neural development patterns unprecedented in thornback evolution. The cubs are exhibiting behaviors that—" "They're just being good kids," Emma interrupted. "I set boundaries, they learn. I show them affection, they reciprocate. I teach them that other people matter, they start caring about other people. This isn't complicated. It bypasses the extinction trigger entirely," Kaeldra added. "Territorial bonding creates an us versus them mentality. Familial bonding creates an us and them mentality. The cubs are learning to extend their protective circle rather than restrict it." "In practical terms?" Zilax asked. "In practical terms, we're witnessing the first peaceful thornback maturation in recorded history." Kaeldra pulled up the neural scans. "These cubs will reach maturity in 12 days. Based on current development, they'll be protective of Emma, yes, but not violently territorial. They're learning discretion, proportional response, and social integration." Councilmember Vexia leaned forward. "Dr. Kaeldra, you've studied this species for 2 centuries. You've documented every known behavioral pattern. How certain are you?" "Absolutely certain." Kaeldra's voice didn't waver. "Because I was absolutely certain before. And I was absolutely wrong. We all were. We studied thornbacks as they naturally evolved. Solo, aggressive, territorial. We never studied what they could become with a single variable they never had in nature. A parent who cared." Silence fell across the council chamber. Then Emma spoke up. "Look, I get that this is a big science moment and everything. But from my perspective, I've just been doing my job. These cubs showed up scared, hungry, and alone. I fed them. I gave them structure. I paid attention to them. They responded. That's not revolutionary, that's Tuesday. You've done what evolution couldn't in 40 million years," Kaeldra said quietly. Emma laughed. "I gave them breakfast and said, 'Good job. You guys overcomplicate everything.'" Nova stirred at Emma's feet, made a sleepy churring sound, and resettled her head on Emma's boot. "Motion to rescind termination protocols," Elder Sinara announced. "All in favor of sparing the cubs and establishing Ms. Johnson's methodology as standard procedure for future thornback encounters?" Unanimous approval. "Motion to assign Ms. Johnson as primary researcher?" "No," Emma said firmly. "No? I'm a wildlife rehabilitator, not a researcher. I work with animals, not datapads. You want to study this? Fine. But I'm keeping my job and I'm keeping my cubs, and we're going to keep doing what we're doing. You can observe all you want." Orion woke up. noticed the tension in Emma's voice, and moved closer to her leg. Not aggressive, just present. Supportive. See? Emma scratched behind his bone ridge. He knows when I'm stressed. He's checking on me. That's emotional intelligence. That's what happens when you raise someone right. Kyldra watched the interaction, her worldview rebuilt from scratch. 200 years of research, and a human zookeeper had solved the unsolvable in a week with kindness and breakfast. Permission to observe and document? Kyldra asked Emma directly. Sure, just don't be weird about it. And you're bringing coffee. Good coffee, not station swill. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Wildlife Council officially established the Human Maternal Protocol as standard procedure for all previously designated unbondable apex predator species. Within a month, 14 more impossible species had been successfully bonded to human caretakers across 17 systems. Emma declined the promotion to Chief of Rehabilitation. Fieldwork, she'd told Commander Zelax. I like the hands-on stuff. You can keep your administrative duties. Now she sat in her quarters, finishing incident reports while Orion and Nova napped on her feet. Both cubs now the size of adult Earth lions, their bone plates gleaming in the station's artificial lighting. They'd reached maturity 2 days ago. 0 casualties, 0 incidents. The station personnel had stopped being terrified around week 2, once they realized the cubs greeted them every morning with friendly churs instead of violence. Nova had developed a particular fondness for the cafeteria staff, who always saved her vegetable scraps. Orion had appointed himself unofficial security, doing nightly patrols and reporting any anomalies to Emma each dawn. Their morning reports had become station tradition. A soft chime at her door. Kyldra entered, carrying 2 cups of expensive coffee and a datapad that probably weighed more than Emma. Still writing that paper? Emma asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. Maternal frameworks in species previously designated unsocializable. I'm on my 14th revision. Kyldra settled into the spare chair, careful not to disturb Nova's tale. The peer review board keeps asking for more data. Apparently, rewriting 40 million years of established xenobiology requires extensive documentation. Shocking, Emma grinned. Same time tomorrow? The cubs want to show you their new trick. They learned another trick? They've been teaching the younger cubs. You know, the 3 arriving Tuesday? Emma scratched behind Orion's bone ridge. He stirred, making that impossible purring sound that Kyldra had finally accepted as real. Physiology be damned. Figured they could help me with the newcomers. Peer mentoring. Kyldra updated her notes. Species-wide behavioral evolution, propagating through social learning rather than genetic drift. Revolutionary didn't begin to cover it. Across the galaxy, the Council was establishing human-wildlife liaison departments. Emma had already received 47 requests for consultation. She'd ignored 46 of them. A soft roar from the corridor, Nova's sister from the Tuesday shipment, practicing her inside voice. Good girl, Stella, Emma called out. Much better. 3 more apex predators now lived on the station. 3 more apocalypse engines, learning to say please and thank you, metaphorically speaking. Emma pulled up her schedule for the next day. Morning reports with the cubs. Training session with the new arrivals. Lecture to visiting council dignitaries about proper cub handling. Don't panic. They can smell fear and it makes them anxious. Afternoon nap time. Evening enrichment activities. Okay, babies, she said, gently nudging both cubs awake. Mommy's got 3 more arriving Tuesday. Think you can help me teach them manners? Orion roared softly. Agreement, pride, readiness. Nova added her own vocalization, a promise to be the best big sister ever. In the corner, Kyldra updated the entire thornback species database, rewriting 2 centuries of her own research with trembling manipulators and something that might have been joy. Emma laughed, the sound warm and completely unsurprised by the cosmic revolution happening around her. See? They're good kids. You just have to listen to their morning reports.